You're trying to lose fat, build muscle, and you know you need to work out, but you simply don't have the time to spend 2 hours in the gym 4 to 5 times per week. I get it, but I'm here to tell you that that doesn't have to be the case. With an effective plan, you can get amazing results in far less time. And I know this because my team and I have helped hundreds of busy professionals who have full-time careers, families, and other responsibilities lose fat and get in fantastic shape without having to overhaul their entire life. In this video, I'm going to break down the science of fat loss, discuss the importance of resistance training over cardio to get the biggest bang for your buck, talk about the role of cardiovascular exercise for fat loss, and of course, I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide on what your workout plan should look like so you can start losing fat today. Let's get right into it. Okay, so starting off, I think it's really important to take a second and talk about the role of exercise for fat loss. Okay, because although we're going to be talking about an effective exercise plan to help you lose fat, it's important to understand that exercise doesn't inherently cause fat loss. Okay, so just because you're exercising does not mean you are going to lose fat, but exercise definitely supports fat loss. So what do I mean by that? First and foremost, to lose body fat, to lose weight, you have to be in a calorie deficit. And I've made a number of different podcast episodes talking about effective strategies to be in a calorie deficit, but at the end of the day, you have to be in a calorie deficit. You have to consume less calories than your body burns. But exercise can be a very effective part of that. Okay. First and foremost, exercise will help you burn more calories, right? Because as you move, you burn calories, so it helps you increase energy expenditure. Second off, exercise also helps you increase your metabolic rate. So it helps you burn more calories at rest. How does it do this? Well, if you are exercising in a way that's effective, which we're going to be talking about later, and you are building muscle and improving your body composition, well, muscle is metabolically active, and as a byproduct, you're going to have a greater energy expenditure. And lastly, exercise can help with hunger regulation, and this one's might come as a surprise to you because a lot of people say that they don't exercise much because it makes them really hungry, which is inherently not true. Yes, when you exercise, you're going to feel hungry because you burn a lot of calories, you're moving a lot. But in general, the science doesn't show that people who exercise consume more calories than what they're burning. In other words, if you are exercising and burning an additional 300 to 400 calories per day, the science does not support that causes you to consume more than an additional 300 to 400 calories per day, resulting in weight gain. And there's actually really good science that exercise helps regulate hunger. So we have hormones, things like ghrelin, GLP-1, leptin, you probably have heard of those, that are involved in the physiology of hunger regulation. And it's been shown that exercise helps regulate those in a favorable fashion to help you feel less hungry throughout the day and reduce overall caloric intake. Okay, so exercise doesn't inherently cause weight loss, but it certainly helps support weight loss and help support fat loss. And one thing we're going to be talking about as well is that weight loss and fat loss are not synonymous, right? And exercising correctly will help you maximize fat loss. We'll talk about that in a second. And in general, if you're going to have an effective fat loss program overall, exercise is a very important component of this, and it should be paired with developing healthy habits around your nutrition and lifestyle as well. All right, now let's talk about what your exercise routine should look like. And there are going to be 3 components to this, or 3 different types of exercise modalities that we should be including as part of a well-rounded science-backed program, okay? We have resistance training, which is simply lifting weights, going to the gym and training with an emphasis on getting stronger and building muscle. We are going to have high-intensity cardio activities. This would be like sprinting or doing any sort of cardiovascular activity where you are near maximal heart rate. And we also want to include low intensity physical activity or low intensity cardio, right? These are activities that you can sustain for a long period of time and your heart rate is not really elevated. They're not super fatiguing. Think about walking, for example. Now, of these 3, I'm definitely biased and think that resistance training should be the main priority and it should serve as the basis of your exercise routine. Okay. First and foremost, it's important to understand, and I was mentioning this a little bit earlier, that weight loss is not the same thing as fat loss, right? Anybody who's trying to improve their body composition, even though you're saying that you want to lose weight, your main goal is really to maximize fat loss, right? And fat is simply a component of weight. You could lose 10 pounds and it's not all fat, right? It's typically a combination of water, glycogen, muscle, lean tissue, and fat. Right? And what we want to do is maximize fat loss and minimize the loss of lean tissue, muscle, because we don't want to lose muscle, right? Because that's not improving our body composition. Ideally, when we lose body fat, we retain or maybe even gain muscle throughout the process. So if you lose 10 pounds in a fashion that's, let's say, not optimal, you could lose a lot more muscle mass than somebody who loses the same amount of weight, 10 pounds, in a much more effective and optimal way. Right? Somebody could lose 12 to 13 pounds of body fat, gain 2 to 3 pounds of muscle, and have significantly better improvements in body composition than somebody who lost 10 pounds, maybe lost 5 pounds of body fat, 5 pounds of muscle. And this is why I think that resistance training needs to be the main emphasis of your workout program, because when you lift weights, you're stimulating muscle growth, muscle repair. You're stimulating your muscles to get stronger and adapt to the training that you're doing. So you're going to be retaining as much muscle as possible during your fat loss phase, which is going to help you maximize losing body fat and not losing muscle mass. Okay. Whereas if you mainly do cardio, you're not really providing your body the stimulus to retain muscle mass as effectively as if you were really pushing the weights in the gym, or at home. If you have a home gym as well, that would be perfectly fine. Right? Now, how much should you be training, or how much should you be resistance training? Obviously, in general, more is better. And this is why elite athletes train 6 or 7 times a week, sometimes multiple times per day. But what I'm going to share with you here today is a simple 3 times per week full body training session that you can do in no more than 60 minutes. Okay, so if you have 60 minutes 3 times a week, that is going to be plenty to get absolutely amazing results. Okay, so next we need to talk about the role of endurance training, aka cardio, for losing body fat. As I mentioned, it's not just about lifting weights, even though lifting weights should be the primary focus. We should be including different amounts and kinds of cardio as well. And here we're going to talk about low intensity cardio, things like walking, and high intensity cardio, things like sprinting, right? High intensity cardio, the main difference is that your heart rate is near its maximum. You're putting forth maximal effort. You can really only sustain it for a short period of time. And low intensity steady state means that your heart rate is not near its maximum or even like really that elevated. It's slightly elevated, and it's a low intensity activity that you can sustain for a long period of time that isn't super fatiguing. Okay, and we want to have a combination of both. When it comes to high intensity cardio, I'm a big fan of doing high intensity interval training if you are short on time. Okay, and high intensity interval training simply means that you undulate between periods of high intensity and then low intensity, right? So like sprinting for 30 seconds followed by walking for 30 seconds, and doing that back and forth for a certain number of cycles would be an example of high intensity interval training. Now, why am I such a big fan of high intensity interval training? One, it's very time efficient. Right? You can get a great workout in 10, 15, 20 minutes max. In addition, it burns a good amount of calories for in a short period of time, right? You could jog for 30, 40 minutes, and I'm throwing out random numbers here, but you could have an equally effective calorie burning workout in 15 to 20 minutes using high intensity interval training. In addition, it's great for your heart health. Right? Getting your heart rate near its maximum capabilities is very beneficial for overall cardiovascular health. And lastly, high intensity interval training, high intensity cardio in general, results in something called a greater EPOC, EPOC. It's essentially an acronym for excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. I know that is a mouthful, but it simply refers to the amount of energy that we need to recover from exercise, okay? So we burn a certain amount of calories during exercise, and then we burn a certain amount of calories after exercise to recover. So things like repairing damaged muscle, restoring glycogen, cooling your body down. Obviously, your core body temperature goes up during exercise, bringing your heart rate back down to rest. All of these things require energy, and it happens after exercise. Okay, so that's what this EPOC term is referring to. And in general, higher intensity activities have a greater EPOC because they're more demanding on the body. So you burn more calories recovering from that exercise. So high intensity interval training is great because not only do you burn a good amount of calories doing the exercise, you actually have greater energy expenditure throughout the following 12 to 16 or maybe even 24 hours as your body recovers from that training session. Now, in addition to the high intensity interval training, it's also important to include some some low intensity steady state cardio as well. And the main two benefits of low intensity steady state cardio are, well, I would say three benefits is one, again, being active, so you're burning more calories. Two, it helps with exercise recovery. We'll talk about why. And three, it's also great for overall cardiovascular health. Okay, and examples of low intensity steady state cardio would be things like walking, doing some very light jogging, going for a light swim, just biking around your neighborhood, right? It's important to move around throughout the day, guys. If you're trying to lose body fat and you just work out really hard for an hour a day or even an hour just 3 times a week, and then you sit the majority of the day, that's not good, right? We want to move. And doing some low intensity physical activity is a very simple way to move around, increase your calorie burn, and not be super fatigued because it's not intense exercise. It's also very beneficial for your cardiovascular health, and it's great for exercise recovery because when you move around, your heart rate is slightly elevated. You are pumping more blood throughout your body, and it helps with things like clearing metabolites from the muscle after exercise. It helps reduce soreness. It improves the rate of recovery so you're ready for your next workout. So low intensity physical activity is absolutely fantastic. There's a ton of upside and very little, if any, downside whatsoever. Okay, now that we understand the 3 different modalities of exercise that we should be including in our program, resistance training, high intensity cardiovascular activities, and low intensity physical activities as well, let's talk about how to put this together into an actionable plan to help you start losing body fat. So first, let's talk about the resistance training component. We are going to be training 3 times per week, evenly spread out throughout the week, right? This could be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. It does not matter, but I would highly recommend to have a day of rest in between so that you perform your best because you're allowing your muscles to recover in between training sessions. Now, if your schedule doesn't allow and you have to do 2 sessions back to back, it is not the end of the world. It's just not optimal, okay? Since we are trying to save time, we're going to be doing, as I mentioned, full body training sessions, and we are going to be focusing on big compound free weight movements, ideally some machines as well. But the reason why I like focusing on compound movements, things like squats, bench presses, deadlifts, pull-ups, is because you train more muscles at once, so you get more stimulus in less time, so it's more time efficient. But they also result in more calories being burned. Again, we're talking here in the context of fat loss, right? A squat, doing a set of 10 on a squat is going to burn more calories than doing a set of 10 on something like a leg extension because it's just a bigger, more difficult movement that requires the coordination of several different muscle groups. It's more fatiguing, so it also increases EPOC, what we were talking about earlier, more than simple exercises like a leg extension, for example. So we want to be focusing on big compound movements. All right. Second to that, we want to be using supersets. Supersets simply refers to doing 2 exercises back to back. Okay, so doing a set of your squat and then immediately going into a set of your bench press. And it doesn't have to be immediate, maybe a short rest period in between there, but it's doing 2 exercises back to back. Again, this makes the workout more time efficient. Let's say you do a set of squats and you typically rest 3, 4, 5 minutes. Well, instead of just sitting around for that time, you could do a set of your other exercise in between, right? So it's more time efficient. This also ensures that your heart rate is elevated throughout the workout, which again helps you increase your calorie burn. Now, one thing I want to make sure that we focus on when we do supersets is that we're doing supersets for exercises that do not target the same muscles, right? So if we do something like a squat and a bench press, we could superset those because the squat targets the legs, the bench press targets the chest and the triceps and the shoulders, right? We wouldn't want to be doing something like a squat and a deadlift as a superset because those target similar muscle groups, right? The squats obviously really target the low back and the midsection and the glutes, and so do deadlifts. So it's going to be very, very taxing and you're not going to be able to perform optimally. So in general, when it comes to these full body workouts, to just make this super simple, I like supersetting a lower body movement with an upper body movement. I typically superset the leg movement, that's a press like a squat or a leg press or something like that, with the upper body pulling movement, something like a pull down or a pull up or a row. And then I like supersetting the hip hinging movement, something like a good morning or a deadlift, with my pressing movements like a bench press or an overhead press. Okay. For each of our 3 workouts, we are going to do 4 main compound movements. One for the lower body, that is quad focused. All right. So again, this would be squat, hack squat, leg press, Smith machine squat. It does not matter which one of those you choose. One lower body quad focused movement. We're going to choose one lower body hip hinge or hamstring focused movement. This could be a deadlift or a good morning or a hamstring curl. Okay. We're going to choose one upper body pushing focused movement, a bench press, an overhead press, an incline dumbbell chest press. And we are going to choose one upper body pulling movement, a row, a pull down, or any variation of those. Okay, so 4 big movements, 2 lower body, 1 for the quads, 1 a hip hinge that's hamstring focused, 2 for the upper body, 1 pushing and 1 pulling. So we're going to have 4 big movements for each of the workouts. And as I mentioned, we are going to superset one of the lower body movements with one of the upper body movements. And in general, I like to do 3 to 4 supersets of each. Okay, so let's say I'm doing a leg press supersetted with a bench press. I will do 3 to 4 total rounds of that superset, and then I will do 3 to 4 rounds of the following superset as well. Let's say a good morning and a dumbbell row, for example. So I'm doing anywhere between 12 to 16 sets for the workout because we have 4 exercises, 3 to 4 sets for each, 12 to 16 sets. In terms of rep ranges, I like to keep it fairly simple. For my first 2 movements, I like to go pretty heavy. Sometimes I do 6 to 8 reps. Sometimes I do 8 to 10 reps. But in general, those first 2 movements, I like to go pretty heavy. And then the second 2 movements, I go a little bit lighter in a higher rep range. So 12 to 15 repetitions in general. And the reason why I like to do this is so that I get the best of both worlds, right? I'm training in a heavier rep range when my nervous system is fresh. I'm just getting into the gym, so I could really push myself and push the weights. And then after those first 2 exercises, that first superset, I'm a little bit fatigued, and then it's a little bit easier to just go on a higher rep range with the other exercises and really stimulate some hypertrophy. And what I like to do is then switch which exercises I'm going in the heavy rep range versus the lighter rep range from workout to workout. So if on the first day I do a leg press and a bench press as the first 2 movements, and those are my heavy movements, so quads and chest, and then I follow that up with higher reps for hamstrings and back, right? So like a hip hinge and a pull. The next workout, I will literally flip those, right? And I'll go heavier rep range in the hamstrings and back, and then a lighter rep range for the quads and the chest. So I get the best of both worlds there, and I'm getting a little bit of variation. Okay. Now, I've just shared what everything looks like for one specific workout, but what I typically do for my training routine is that for each of the days, and I'm training 3 times a week full body right now, I choose a different compound movement for each of the main movement patterns. Okay. So for my quads, I have a leg press, a hack squat, and a Smith machine squat that I do on the 3 different days. For my hamstrings, I do a machine-based good morning. I do a barbell stiff leg deadlift, and I do a standing hamstring curl. For the upper body pressing movements, I do a flat bench press. I do an incline bench press with a barbell, and I also do dumbbell incline chest press. And then for the back, I do neutral grip pull-ups, wide grip pull-ups, and a dumbbell row. Right, and then I combine those. Obviously, the combinations are endless, but essentially, I alternate through those throughout the 3 workouts. So I have distinct exercises that I'm doing on distinct days, just for variation, essentially. But obviously, you can choose whichever big compound movements you enjoy for each of those movement patterns. You could stick with those for 4 to 6 weeks, and then you can have some substitutions in there as well. Now, after I do my 2 supersets, right, the first 2 movements and then the second 2 movements, I then do some calves. So I'll do 4 sets of calves on most of these days, supersetted with either biceps, triceps, or some lateral raises, right? Because we still want to hit some of these smaller movement or smaller muscle groups that don't get hit with the big compound movements that well. I want to grow my calves, so I do calf training pretty much every workout. And then between the calf sets, I do either on Monday 3 sets of biceps. I'll do calves, biceps, calf, biceps, calf, biceps, calves, right? That's 4 sets of calves, 3 sets of biceps. On Wednesdays, I do the same thing, but I superset the calves with triceps. And then on Fridays, I do the same thing, but I superset the calves with lateral raises. That way throughout the week, I'm getting one day where I focus on biceps, one day where I focus on triceps, one day where I focus on my lateral delts. all in between sets of calves because I really want to prioritize my calves at the moment. And then after that, I will do 3 sets of abs, right? So super simple. I do my first 2 supersets, 3 to 4 sets. I do my second two exercises as a superset, 3 to 4 sets. And then I do 4 sets of calves alternated with biceps, triceps, or lateral delts. And then I do 2 to 3 sets of abs at the end. And that's the entire resistance training routine. I track everything in an Excel sheet, and then I try to make sure I get a little bit stronger from week to week. Pretty simple. So aside from the resistance training routine, now let's talk about the high intensity interval training. I would encourage you to include 2 high intensity interval training sessions per week, 15 to 20 minutes max. Okay, this could be any exercise that you like doing that can be performed at a high intensity. Things that require no equipment whatsoever would be sprinting, burpees, running in place, right? You could keep it really simple. My favorite is jump roping, but if you're not really proficient at jump roping, it's going to take some time to get there, but it might be a nice skill that you want to develop. Now, what you want to do here is throughout the duration of the training session, 15 to 20 minutes, you want to alternate between time periods where you're at a very high intensity and time periods where you are at a low intensity or recovering, right? If you're new to this style of training, it's going to be pretty hard. I would encourage you to maybe start with a 15 to 20 second interval at a high intensity, right? So let's say you go 15 seconds sprinting and then rest for 45 seconds to a minute. During the rest, you're not sitting down, you're just walking, right? And then you can do that back and forth for a total of 15 to 20 minutes. As you get better at it and the 15 seconds feels easy, you can go from 15 seconds to 20 seconds to 30 seconds. I think ultimately, if you can get to a 1-to-1 ratio where you're sprinting for about a minute and walking for about a minute, that would be absolutely fantastic. But getting there is going to take some time. Okay. Now, in addition to the HIIT sessions, and the HIIT sessions can literally be done whenever you want, it's also important to focus on the low intensity physical activity. And this is super, super simple, guys. What I recommend here is just setting a daily step goal. Okay. Track your steps on your phone for a week or 2, see where you're at, and slowly start to increase it. If you're somebody who's pretty sedentary and you don't really track your steps ever, you'd be surprised at how low they could be. Maybe 2,000 to 3,000 steps per day. What I encourage you to do is try to increase them at 500 steps per day for a week, right? Let's say you're at 3,000 steps, bump it up to 3,500. Stay there for a week. Then bump it up to 4,000. Stay there for a week and slowly bump it up until you get to a reasonable amount that fits your lifestyle. If you can get to the point where you're doing 8 to 10,000 steps per day, that would be absolutely amazing. And you might think, man, I don't really have time to do that. You do. And what I would encourage you to do is to schedule your walks. So for me personally, I sit at a desk for like 8 hours a day. I go to the gym Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at the moment. But I schedule my walks. I try to go for a 15 to 20 minute walk first thing in the morning. If you don't have time in the morning, wake up a little bit earlier. I tend to go on a 15 to 20 minute walk during my lunch break. If I ever have calls that I need to get on, meetings, I go for a walk, put my headphones in and hop on the meeting on my phone. And then after work, I like to go for a 15 to 20 minute walk with my family, or maybe sometimes just me and my son. And so I'm getting an hour to an hour and a half of intentional walking per day, and that easily puts me at 8 to 10,000 steps per day. So I would encourage you to look at your schedule, audit your time, and figure out small little pockets of 15 to 20 minutes where you can go for walks throughout your day and increase your step count to 8 to 10,000 steps per day. Okay, so to quickly recap everything, guys, resistance training should be the focus, should be the primary focus to help you maximize muscle mass retention, even maybe build some muscle during your fat loss phase. That's going to help you maximize losing body fat and not muscle. We want to train 3 times per week. That's going to be a total of 60, maybe 70 minutes per workout. So 3 to 4 hours max out of your week, focusing on those big compound movements, doing supersets so it's time efficient and you're burning a ton of calories because your heart rate is up. We're going to do 2 HIIT sessions, 15 to 20 minutes, building up in terms of the duration that you're doing the high intensity stuff, right? Start with 15 to 20 second sprints and slowly build that up till you're at a 1-to-1 ratio. And lastly, have a daily step target and make sure you're moving sufficiently throughout the day and build that up from where you are at the moment to 8 to 10,000 steps. That would be absolutely amazing. Okay. Now, before we wrap this up, guys, I want to let you know that if you have goals around losing body fat and building muscle, you've tried all sorts of diets and workout plans and nothing seems to stick long term, I guarantee that my team and I can probably help you make sustainable progress towards your health and fitness goals. And if you want help with that, I would encourage you to head over to our website, fit4lifeacademy.health. The link is going to be down in the description, or you can just type Fit that's the number 4, lifeacademy.health on your browser and find us that way and submit an application and book a call with us to see if we're a good fit to work together. With that said, I hope you enjoyed this episode and I'll catch you in next week's episode. Peace.